Over 4 years ago, I went to work at a warehouse in the small town that I'm from. I decided to leave after my health started to get worse physically, and I was diagnosed with panic disorder and severe anxiety after the situation that I'm about to tell you. This changed the way that I developed friendships after that job, that's for certain. So I started this job on April Fool's Day of 2018, which was odd to me, and I had no kind of high expectation about the job. All I wanted was to do my job, get paid, and go home, as I had 2 children at home and many things that I could work on there. The job wasn't hard and it made pretty good money for all the duties considered, so I really couldn't complain. I worked second shift for about 5 months and then I went to day shift. While working on second shift, I kept to myself mostly until one day. I met somebody from one of the lines after we struck up a conversation about gaming. For the sake of staying anonymous, we'll name him JF. Well, JF was a pretty good guy and we had a lot of things in common. I went home that night and he popped up as a suggested friend on Facebook. Again, another oddity, so I decided to add him. When I did, we started talking more at work until he suggested that we should hang out, so we did hang out. Pretty often, too. We were friends for a month at this point, and one day he decided that he was going to introduce me to his partner. She seemed decent at first, super nice, didn't seem to be a judgmental type, so I was cool with her. From then on, I would hang out with him when my kids were spending time with my mother. One time, we were talking at a restaurant, and he started to vent to me. Dude, she's so awful sometimes. The other day, I forgot to take out the trash, and she threatened to stab me if I didn't. I've never been in a relationship where somebody's threatened me, but she's got good intentions, dude. When he said that to me, I was concerned, but of course, we had only been friends for a month, so I thought that maybe he was being morbid, jokingly so I kind of chuckled at him. He gave me a pretty serious look and said, "I'm not joking, she really did," and that concerned me. Fast forward about 8 months, they're still together and we all hang out pretty often, forgetting the things that he told me then. One day we were all talking and he seemed a little off that day, so I asked him what was wrong in front of her. He flashed a smirk and said, "Oh, nothing, dude, just a little tired." He didn't have his eyes on me though. He had them on her when I asked that. When we went to work the next day, I asked him again, "Do you promise to keep this between us?" "Of course," I agreed. He said that he was breaking up with her and she went a little crazy. He said that she grabbed her gun and pointed it at him and said, "If I can't have you, then no one will." He said that he diffused the situation and is trying to look for a way out. Not really knowing what to say, I just said, "You'll figure it out, man. If you need somewhere to go, then you can come stay with me until you get her out of the house." Fast forward to another year and he finally decided to leave her. When he did, she flipped out again. This time he told her over text. She said that she was going to find him and kill him, and he was actually out of work that day with a vacation day. He sent me a text that said, "Hey, let me know if she comes over to work looking for me." That struck me as odd because I had no idea of the situation that was unfolding. She actually did come to our job and she asked me where he was, and I said, "Oh, I have no idea. I thought that he was with you and you guys went out of town or something." All she did was roll up her window and drive off. I called him and told him that she came by and he called the police about it. They had found her up the road with a loaded gun in the car. 2 months later, he decided to talk to her again, and when he did, he had something to tell me. When he had called me, he asked if I had seen her around, and I hadn't. He said, "I would take some vacation days if I were you." Dumbfounded, I asked him why. He said to me, "Well, because she's out of jail and her cousins are in town trying to find the people that she has personal vendettas with, and you're one of them." At that point, I was terrified. I grabbed my kids and went out of town. Took 2 weeks off of work. Come to find out the next day, her and her cousins went to the next town over and shot 3 people in an apartment and killed them. I got the news about it the day after it had happened. The reason why he knew they were coming after me is because they made a Facebook Messenger group that he was included in and sent a list of names. Everybody regarded it as spam and decided to disregard the message, but he knew what it was. 3 of the names on that list were the people that were shot. The 4th name on that list, well, it was mine. After they found the evidence and he decided to go public about the group and screenshots that he had, they were all charged with first-degree murder. From then on, I was very careful about who I would stick my neck out for because even though he knew the context of that list and her intentions, he decided to not inform anybody else on it. Needless to say, we aren't friends anymore and I dodged a bullet. Literally. My wife and I were talking about an experience the other night about being followed by a red truck, and she reminded me of this story as well. It's mildly interesting, so I figured that I would share it. My girlfriend and I were graduate students living together in a 6-unit apartment building with an outside stairwell. It was an older Victorian home that had been converted into apartments. The whole street was lined with similar buildings. It was off campus but conveniently located within walking distance of bars, a coffee shop, and several restaurants. The neighborhood had a laid-back bohemian vibe. The tenants were a mixture of college kids, young professionals, and families. The area was generally safe, but it wasn't too far from a rougher section of town. It was a Thursday night, and being the night owl that I am, it was past 3 a.m. and I had just finished a movie. I turned the TV off and went to the stairwell for a quick smoke before bed. We were in the middle of a snowstorm. The ground was covered in 6 inches of fresh powder and it was freezing, scary cold. I quickly smoked my cigarette and rushed back inside. My girlfriend was always complaining about me forgetting to lock the door, and as was my habit, I left the door unlocked. I jumped into bed, and just as I was falling asleep, I thought that I heard a noise. I brushed it off at first, but then I heard a creak. Probably just the wind, I concluded. But moments later, I heard the floorboards creaking. Now I was listening intently. My girlfriend felt me shuffling and asked what was wrong. I told her that I thought that I heard something, and then we both heard what sounded like somebody stumbling into our couch. We shot up and I yelled, "Is someone there?" No answer, but the floor creaked again. This time in unison we shouted, "Who's there?" Another noise, and I quietly stood up and scanned the room for something that could be used as a weapon. Nothing. Growing up, my dad always kept a baseball bat under his bed, and I regretted not adopting this practice. We yelled again, but there was no response. Again, but this time from the darkness, we were greeted by a low-pitched, incomprehensible growl. I wondered if it was one of my buddies playing a prank on me, but that seemed out of character for my friends, especially at this hour on a weekday night and during a snowstorm. What I really thought was that a crackhead had wandered in. My girlfriend yelled, "Who's out there?" More footsteps. The intruder was still in the family room, but he was getting closer to her bedroom. We heard the growl again, but this time it was followed by a gurgle and, It's Matt." We didn't know any Matts, at least not any that would enter our apartment uninvited in the middle of the night. I looked at my girlfriend, and I had never seen someone more scared. If worse came to worse, I knew that I could outrun her, but I hoped it didn't come to that. "Matt who?" we shouted repeatedly. After a long pause, he finally said, "Matt, I'm friends with Mike and Kelly." Relief washed over both of us. Mike and Kelly were our neighbors. I turned on the lights and walked into the family room, and there he stood, a 6'2" college kid. Matt was blacked out drunk. Our neighbors had hosted a pregame party at their apartment, followed by a trip to the nearby bars. They had abandoned Matt, and despite the storm, he had found his way back to their apartment. Their door was locked and his phone calls had gone unanswered. His evolutionary drive to survive had kicked in, and he sought warmth in the first unlocked apartment that he could find. I told him that he scared the crap out of us and that he had to go. He stepped outside and I quickly locked the door behind him. The next day, I learned that Matt froze to death. He had been discovered by another neighbor, huddled next to her car under the lean-to garage. I'm just kidding. I have no idea what happened to Matt. I do, however, remember being a little concerned for him after my nerves had settled.